week 8 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking this week. Number 1, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Mahomes, he's back to MVP form this season. Now they got Rashee Rice back in the lineup last week. He didn't miss a beat, scoring 2 touchdowns. And this week with a matchup versus the Commanders on Monday night, where their defense hasn't stopped anyone in the last few weeks, I think Mahomes goes out there once again and has a big ball game. And he's putting up easily 30, 35 points per game over the last few weeks. Number 2, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, it's been a solid season once again for Allen, but this Bill team, they really haven't played well, and they're coming off a tough loss in Week 6 at Atlanta. So coming off the bye week, I think they're going to be refocused, refreshed, is this Buffalo Bill team. And this week, a pretty good matchup at the Panthers, even though this Carolina Panther team has won 3 games in a row, but their defense still really can't stop anyone besides the New York Jets. And I think Allen goes out there this week and he comes back after that bad loss in Week 6. Number 3, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson, he's back at practice, so it looks like he's going to play this week. Chicago coming in, and obviously it's been a struggle this season for Baltimore, where they're 1-5 on the season. But Lamar, he's going to give you the rushing yards. He's going to put that ball up and make plays. And obviously Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Henry out of the backfield. And this week in a potential high-scoring game versus the Bears, even if he's not 100%, I like Lamar. It's a top 3 option for Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Jalen Hurts, he proved a lot of people wrong in last week's ball game, and he showed he could throw from the pocket. Is Jalen Hurts. So to go into Minnesota, a good defense, and win that ball game and go over 300 yards passing, I think Jalen Hurts now has got a chip on his shoulder once again this season. I know they won the Super Bowl last year, and also they want to get their win back after losing to the New York Giants 2 weeks ago. So last week we saw a historic collapse from this Giant defense in the fourth quarter versus Bo Nix and the Broncos. And I think this week Jalen Hurts, he could go out there and do damage to this Giant defense. Number 5, Drake May of the New England Patriots. Drake May, already one of the best quarterbacks in pro football and fantasy football in only his second season in the league, and he's really spreading that football out. We know he could run the football a little bit as well, get you some points that way. And this week, no doubt about it, he's versing a tough defense in the Cleveland Browns. Here is Drake May, but still, he's a quarterback who's been matchup proof all season long, and he's putting up easily over 20 fantasy points per game. Number 6, Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last week was a down game for Baker and this Buc team, but this week, no Chris Godwin again, no Bucky Irvin, and Mike Evans obviously broke the collarbone. He's out 8+ weeks now for this Tampa Bay Buc team. But Emeka Egbuka, he played last week. He's going to play once again this week. Tez Johnson, he's been solid, is the rookie. And you got Cade Otton at the tight end position, and Rachaad White, still one of the better receiving backs out of the backfield. So still with decent options on this offense and a good matchup in New Orleans. I think Baker bounces back, has a good game. Number 7, Bo Nix of the Denver Broncos. Like I said early in the video, Bo Nix, he had a historic comeback victory for this Denver Bronco team, scoring 33 points in the fourth quarter. So Bo Nix, when they let him loose, he could go out there and make plays, but just too much this season. A lot of bubble screens, obviously a lot of running out of the pocket instead of just staying in that pocket and making the throws. He has a strong arm, and he makes the right read. So this week in a great matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys, a defense that can't stop anyone, I think Bo Nix once again goes out there and has a nice performance. Number 8, Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. Tonight, Thursday Night Football, Minnesota coming in to Los Angeles. And this offense is loaded as well. 3 good receivers in Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston. The rookie, Andre Gatson, what a breakout it was for him last week at the tight end position. 7 catches, 164 yards, found the end zone. A guy who's a matchup problem, has speed, has height, can make all the plays. And Minnesota last week, we saw Jalen Hurts go out there, have a big ball game versus defense. I think Herbert on Thursday Night Football, where this could be a high-scoring game, to put up numbers once again for owners, even if they're playing catch-up or have the lead. We saw last week they had to play catch-up, and he put up numbers. Number 9, Daniel Jones of the Indianapolis Colts. Daniel Jones, he's been a solid quarterback. He's turned this franchise around in one season. 6-1 on the year is this Indianapolis Colts. Weekly, at least 20-plus fantasy points. When you got a tight end like Tyler Warren, Michael Pittman's had a bounce-back season, and obviously one of the best running backs in the league in Jonathan Taylor. It makes everything a little bit easier, and also with a great offensive line. So this week in a great matchup with Tennessee coming into Indianapolis, I think Daniel Jones goes out there once again and has a big game. Number 10, Jackson Dart of the New York Giants. First 4 games of his NFL career, Jackson Dart's gone out there and he's putting up points and making plays for this New York Giant team, even with limited playmakers in this offense. The last few weeks with Wan'Dale Robinson and Theo Johnson, he's been putting up the numbers. I know Cam Scatterbo in the backfield's been great, but he's not much of a receiver. More weeks than not out of the backfield. But this Giant team, they definitely got something in Jackson Dart. Like I said, he runs the football 40, 50 yards per game so far early on in his career. And this week it's a matchup with Philly, a team he already beat and dominated 2 weeks ago. I know it was in New York on Thursday night and it took Philly by surprise a little bit. But Jackson Dart, just to prove it last week, he was matchup proof to go into Denver and have a nice fantasy day. So this week at Philadelphia, it wouldn't be surprising if he has another good game. Number 11, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. A tough matchup at Denver, even though, like I just said, Jackson Dart, the rookie, went into Denver and played well. But Dak Prescott, we've seen throughout his career where he goes on the road and has some stinkers. So this week, it wouldn't be surprising if he puts in a stinker. But this season, the confidence is an all-time high in the Schottenheimer offense for Dak Prescott, where weekly he's going out there and putting up points. Besides week 3, where he had a bad game in that one, the Bears, he's gone out there every week and he's making plays and helping his team win these games or at least stay in them. So this week at Denver, this game could go either way, a potential high-scoring game between these two teams or a game where Dallas can't score much. Number 12, Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears. So this week, pretty good matchup on paper at Baltimore. Their defense has been a train wreck this season. Their defense has been banged up and haven't stopped anyone as well. And Caleb Williams, he's making plays. We know he's got some rushing upside, obviously. Also, Rome Odunze, besides the last 2 weeks, he was off to a roaring start. Also, DJ Moore still can make some plays, but DeAndre Swift's been an X factor in the backfield, running between the tackles, obviously, and catching the football out of the backfield. So this week, in a good matchup with a banged-up Baltimore team, even though they're coming off bye, I still think Williams is a top 12 option. 13, Joe Flacco of the Cincinnati Bengals. Flacco versus one of his former teams in the New York Jets coming in this week to Cincinnati. And Flacco last week, what a ball game it was for him. Just putting that football up and making his playmakers make the big plays, where Jamar Chase had 23 targets in that game, catching 16 of them, finding the end zone as well. And T. Higgins had a nice ball game finding the end zone. So Flacco, he's going out there, he's slinging that rock all over the yard. And this week, versus a Jet defense that possibly could be out, Sauce Gardner, one of the better corners in the league. Flacco could go out there once again, have a good game. 14, Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. So this Packer team's more run-first offense than it is pass, and we've seen it all season long. Josh Jacobs is having a great season, obviously. Jordan Love, little limited in the passing game. Tucker Kraft's been a solid tight end. You got Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, who hasn't had that breakout game yet. But this week at Pittsburgh, I think Green Bay, they're going to have to try to throw this football a little bit more, because this defense is solid against the runners, this Pittsburgh Steelers DST. And like I said, they got to open up a little bit and get the rookie Matthew Golden going, because if they could get Golden going, is this Green Bay Packer team, they really could have an elite offense, I believe, remainder of the season. 15, Aaron Rodgers staying in the same game of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, you know, Rodgers, the juices are flowing. Green Bay wanted him out a couple seasons ago, then traded him to the New York Jets. And we saw earlier this season in week 1 where versus the New York Jets, his former team, he threw for 4 touchdowns. And this one, it wouldn't be surprising if Rodgers goes out there, has like 200, 250 yards, 2 or 3 touchdowns in this game versus obviously a Packer team he was on for a very long time. 16, Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers. I thought Purdy was going to play last week. He practiced limited. And so far to start the week, the practice report, he's limited as well, is Brock Purdy. So this week, a middle-of-the-pack matchup at Houston. We'll see how many receivers are out this week. Jawan Jennings, he's been fighting through the injury and playing. Ricky Pearsall, he's been out the last few weeks. And Kendrick Bourne had a couple breakout games, but last week came back down to earth. But if Purdy gives it a go in this one, I don't believe he's going to be 100%. But to have Christian McCaffrey and now George Kittle came back last week, even though he didn't do anything healthy, is a big plus. And I think Purdy still could go out there and be a back-end quarterback 1 for fantasy owners. 17, Michael Penix of the Atlanta Falcons. Michael Penix, I'm just playing off matchup this week. And obviously with 6 teams on bye, it's the biggest bye week we're going to see this season. So Michael Penix, he's been up and down this year. The only plus for him in this ball game, obviously it's a home game. And also as well, the Miami Dolphins are coming in. A defense that can't stop anyone. Obviously, when you got Bijan Robinson, one of the better backs overall and receiving backs in the league. Then you got Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney. This is a solid offense, but Michael Penix, he just hasn't put it all together so far this season. But if he wants to get right and get things going this week here, it's a great matchup versus Miami 18 Marcus Mariota, the Washington Commanders. So Jaden Daniels, he's out once again with a hamstring injury, and now Mariota is slotted back into the starting lineup, and it's going to be a tough one for Mariota to go to Kansas City, but with his rushing upside, I still think he could crack the top 20 in fantasy points, and possibly reinforcements could come back this week as well in Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin. So like I said, this week with 6 teams on bye, this list pretty much after 14th, 15th quarterback, it shortens up to guys that you usually would never use unless you're in a 2-quarterback league. But that's what happens with the 6 buys, 19 Carson Wentz of the Minnesota Vikings. So this week a matchup at Los Angeles Chargers tonight. Thursday Night Football, these games are usually high scoring. And Carson Wentz, we know he's a gunslinger. He's a quarterback that's going to push it down the field. And obviously they got a lot of great playmakers in this offense. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Mason in the backfield. Aaron Jones might return in this game as well. He's a game-time decision, so we'll see what happens with that. But Carson Wentz, I think he's due to have a decent game. And on the fast track in Los Angeles on a short week on Thursday night, this could be a good spot for Wentz in those 2-quarterback leagues. And the 20th and final quarterback I'm ranking is Andy Dalton of the Carolina Panthers. So Dalton, we know he's a veteran in this league. We know he still likes pushing that football down the field and making plays. Bryce Young, he's going to be out with the ankle injury and hasn't practiced so far this week, obviously. So this week in a matchup versus Buffalo where they could be chasing points, I think Andy Dalton is a possibility. He just works his way into fantasy value in those deeper leagues. Like I said, if they're down 10, 14 points out of the gate, Dalton's going to go out there and put that football up and try to make plays. So that's the top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking for week 8 of the fantasy football season.